This is the Shadow Chronicles podcast. We are here to take a deep dive into the inner work, generational trauma, and your shadows. Having those hard conversations so you don't have to. You know, all of that shit that just does not get spoken about. In the third drawer down, in the dark, hidden away. My name is Sky and I'm a shadow integration specialist. I am here to help guide you on your journey to unfuck yourself by integrating your shadows, healing the generational trauma so you can vibrate with confidence and just fucking love your life.
And my name is Todd, who's an integrative health coach. I help people own more of who they are, change their lives on many different levels to become who they really are. Find your compass and follow it, to say it simply.
So I just had a really random thought.
You? Yeah. How unlikely.
Right. And I know you've said this ages ago, before you even started a podcast, it's like someone needs to either follow us around with a microphone or we just need to attach little microphones to ourselves and record just a random conversation that we have. Put that up.
It may catch too many incriminating things like
True.
Aggressive farts that are slightly embarrassing. But fair point. I know what you mean.
Yeah. Oh.
I'm assuming you're referring to that conversation we're having before we press record.
Yeah, literally, I'm I should have just totally recorded this,
Should those be off the cuff bonus episodes or something like that?
Yeah, Sky and Todd musings or, something like that.
The tie makes more sense at that point. It's like this flowing element of musings that's just kind of merged.
Yeah, that.
It's about to go wrong if I keep going.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you know?
What?
On listen back, either I didn't listen properly or not, but the pre-recorded intro.
Yeah.
Every time we play it, you laugh because I cringe.
Yeah.
At the chair noise.
Yeah.
I can't hear it on the playback on the episode review.
Oh, well, that's fucking
So I
great.
cringe every time.
You're like, oh.
But it turns out, now that I've processed it, as opposed to this bullshit, the bit that I cringe at isn't actually there. But the bit that I do in the rest of the episode
is it so there?
is absolutely there, which is exactly why AJ was making the point of it.
Yeah.
It's like, whose fucking chair is that?
I was laughing so much because, my husband listens to our podcasts when he drives to work because he drives 6 hours. And so I'm getting messages while he's listening on Siri going, who the fuck is squeaking that chair? And I'm like, that's Todd. Sorry. I sit on a stool because I'm short.
I had a great, awesome plan to fix that by changing this chair for the rocking chair over there.
You'd be on the ground.
But I forgot today.
Oh. Well, it was a bit of a mishatched day. It was on a different day and we've had disappointments and
what it is.
All sorts of things.
But I am wondering if that one would make a bit of noise as well.
I don't know.
We're going to find out next time.
Definitely. On that note, we are here today, or we're going to have a fun conversation today.
We've got some weird stuff to
We got some weird shit to talk about.
As opposed to what we normally talk about.
Yeah, which is totally normal. Ego dissolution.
Where to start?
Yeah. Dark night of the soul. All the good things. Should we start with Dark Night of the Soul? Because when we were having a chat beforehand, that kind of was the massive trigger point. Well, obviously it depends what sort of interpretation you mean when we say Dark Night of the Soul.
Because you looked up the definition after I started rabbiting on for about 5 minutes.
Oh, I know. Because I definitely was Dark Night of the Soul. And I'm like, that's when you're deep in shadow work and you're just fucking nothing makes sense anymore and all of this sort of stuff. So I'm like, Todd, what is your interpretation or what does this mean to you? And you're telling me, I'm like,
Should we start there?
Yes.
As though we're not telling that story and you just asked a genuine question and then we can go from there.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. So Dark Night of the Soul was a term that was pioneered 200 odd years ago. It was this description of this idea that when you go through something challenging, like learning something about yourself that you didn't think was true or you're not as good as what you thought you were or things like this, there's an inevitable challenge to your sense of self, your ego.
Mm-hmm.
And it leads to a certain level of ego death. But to go through that and to process it and integrate it, there's what is sometimes described as a period of depression.
Yeah.
Hence the dark night of the soul. It could be a day, it could be a week, it could be what it is.
Which is sort of why when you were explaining, like telling me that, I'm like, that's shadow work.
And this is why my answer was,
Yeah.
in my interpretation of things, dark night of the soul is effectively the microcosm version of shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a more intrinsic, instinctual thing that's triggered by what could be considered a random event that you've just sort of half naturally processed and integrated, whereas shadow work is a dramatically more intentional, specific, longer term, brutal process. It's not that dark night of the soul isn't. It's just that there's that, you have that existential crisis that happens on a relatively minor level. Like to my interpretation, it's like you found out that maybe you weren't quite as good a singer as you thought you were.
Yeah.
Because when you're not in the bathroom and you got that echoing sort of like reverb and someone else hears it and they're like,
holy crap.
don't give up your day job, bro. And you're like, oh, I'm gutted. I thought I was good. And then you just get to sit with that for 4 days and go, is that the end of the world?
Yeah.
I guess not. I'm singing backup instead of lead. That was always my interpretation of Dark Night of the Soul.
Yeah. We have very different interpretations because that just, like when you say Dark Night of the Soul, I'm like, that's fucking deep, man. Like, and if people like, you know, if you, because even when I was reading up on it, it was just like, oh, it can be described as depression, for example. And I'm like, well, that doesn't normally last a day or 4. That's normally a pretty massive whack that says, you got some shit.
I would have said it's a depressive episode.
Yeah.
How long that takes. And again, this is my interpretation of it.
Yeah. But then
It's not that it's not deep.
yeah.
It's just that it's just not quite the same as shadow work in my mind.
Yeah. I can understand that, definitely. And then even as you were just talking, I was just like, well, yeah, it's like everything is up to the person that's going through it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, so it could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be 10 years. Like,
Depends on if you want to do the work.
yeah, that's it. It's like how long are you willing to sit in that space before you do something or think or, you know, think's a bad word, but, you know, before you start asking yourself the questions like, well, do I really want to be here? Or what am I feeling and why? How do I get out of this?
What's the Joe Dispenza analogy? He was describing this as the process of you have a bad day and you just sit with it and you focus on it. And that turns into a bad week because you've sat and focused with it.
Yeah, well,
And then you turn it into a bad month. And you eventually get to the point where people start to notice, like, is he always like that? And it's like, no, he's kind of crabby. And it gets to the point where you go from a bad day because you've sat with it on that level and haven't addressed it to the point where it becomes a personality trait.
yeah.
And you could argue that that's how this thing that we're talking about now becomes depression in the bigger scheme of things.
Yeah.
Like you've just focused on the negative to the extent where this is what your neurology thinks is how it's supposed to be now.
Yeah, which then falls back to, you know, what we were talking about a few episodes ago, you know, and that's where, like, you know, where focus goes, energy flows. So it's, yeah, the more you focus on something, the bigger it's going to get. And depending on what you're focusing on, it's either going to be good or bad.
Yeah.
Or, you know, positive or negative, whichever light you want to shine on it. And, yeah, as you said, like, the more you then focus on that one thing, then that becomes an identity or then a personality trait.
Yeah.
You know, and
you're just that person now.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I don't know. I have wee arguments about that.
Sorry?
I said I have wee arguments about that because it's just, yeah, I know. That's just a term I've heard way too much in my life for people being shit or treating other people like trash. Oh, they're just like that. It's okay.
But that's the inherent problem with the process of not addressing that. That's why shadow work is a thing. It's why it's a fucking big deal. And it's why it's part of why I've interpreted dark night of the soul is like that triggering aspect to have you recognize that there's things about you that you don't know about, or at least not consciously.
Yeah.
That if you don't address, turns into something else.
Yeah.
And the necessity of shadow work, or just becoming that, that's just how they are.
Yeah.
Like, it's lazy.
You don't know what you know until you know.
Victim blamey, but it's that if you have a problem with how you experience your life, but you're not prepared to put the effort in to confront that, then I guess from a certain point of view, that is lazy. It's like you're not investing the energy, and energy goes where thought and focus flows.
Yeah.
That's when it turns into that.
Yeah.
But if you're not paying attention to the triggers, again, like I've interpreted Dark Night of the Soul to be, no, you just learned something about yourself. And if you've taken a week to integrate it, cool. What else is there?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So that to me sounds like it's the step into it.
That. Because to my mind, a Dark Night of the Soul is something it's just something that's come up in your life. Like when you were looking at the definition, the death of a loved one or something like that sort of thing. It's like which is a big
thing,
a big deal, because not only have you lost someone, it's compelled you to address your own mortality.
Yeah,
these are not small things.
No,
but it's not an intentional thing either. So it hasn't been done with this level of energy and intention and focus, which I would assign to shadow work.
Yeah.
Because you don't do shadow work unless you're there for it. And I know you know that.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas a Dark Night of the Soul is just that one of those things that comes up in life that, oh, shit, reality doesn't work the way I thought it did.
Yeah.
And you've got to address it on some level, but you may or may not be able to skate past it going, oh, that was just a thing.
Yep.
Death happens to everyone.
Yeah.
But if you don't confront
whatever's coming up,
the flippantness by which you dismiss death, for example, how do you ever heal from said losses, so to speak? You just ignore it, which is the detachment and disassociation and all that sort of stuff.
Yep, suppression. Cool.
How do we end up being that cranky old prick that just starts to sound like an excuse to Sky? Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So that's at least the Todd version of Dark Night of the Soul.
It's a good version.
It's what I'm running with.
Yeah. That's mine. I'm taking it. I'm out. Yeah. Yeah. So as I said, just as you were talking then, I'm like, oh, I get it. Because my brain takes a minute to process. It is literally, to me, it's like that step-in process. It's either that a small or big trigger that kind of knocks you on your ass, that says, hey, there's something going on here. And ultimately, as you just mentioned, you have the choice to go, well, what the fuck's going on? Yeah. Or B, going, well, this is fucking my life now. I'm just going to stay down here.
Assuming you're even present enough to think either of those things. You're like, well, what happens if it's just like some prick was an arsehole to me at the pub? And instead of addressing your behaviour, you just write it off as that guy was a prick. Yeah. So you have this couple of days where you're focused on what a dick, what a prick. Why do I feel this way? That's not fair. Blah blah blah. From a certain real point of view, that's a dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually sort of addressing like, why do I feel this way? Because maybe you've either had not enough practice or have no one around you to ask that question, because not everyone has Sky on their shoulder.
I don't think everyone wants Sky on their shoulder.
No, you're a bit shovey.
Just a tad.
But that is like, it's those occasions, is that relatively unthinking level of triggered.
Yeah.
That if you're lucky, you pay attention. If you're unlucky, you just write it off as some arsehole at the pub.
Yeah.
And don't really become present and thoughtful and aware of that and why that's a thing.
Yep.
Thoughts?
Well, I just wondered, like, as you were just talking, I was like, as you said, as long as the person who's experiencing X is like, you know, present enough to actually stop and up. And 100%, a lot of people aren't, whether present or willing would be a better word to ask those questions.
Both.
But part of me is like, you got to kind of know at some level. Like,
I think that depressive state that happens, I think that's what that is, because you're compelled to confront yourself on some level. So what if that depressive state is this subconscious processing of that thing?
Yeah.
It never actually reaches your conscious mind.
No.
And you're just sitting with that.
And that's where I mean. It's
but
just like,
never the two shall meet sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by like, oh, you know, what the fuck's going on? Like, you know, better sort this shit out, or, oh, fuck, this is just my life now. And it's just like, that's what I mean. It's like, well, really, then you have been somewhat present, because you've then made the decision going, well, this is just who I am. You like then consciously.
It's just a thing that happened.
Just a thing, like, you know, then you've kind of consciously made that decision, which means you would have been present enough to, you know, go left or right. And yeah, like, so whether or not it's like some assholes at the gym, the pub.
That happened at the gym the other day as well. Anyway, long story.
Really? What happened?
The wrong word was used, not in like, okay, in case anyone's sitting there going, like, who was dropping N-bombs and racial slurs? It wasn't like that, but someone was talking about, so there's a guy who competes at the gym.
Yeah.
Like bodybuilder comp.
I was going to say there's a few that compete at our gym.
You know who I'm talking about. The biggest of the big blokes. Like proper top tier heavyweight kind of guy.
Okay.
And after you've done all your dieting down to get on stage to look like you're negative on your body fat score.
Yeah.
When you start to refeed, you bulk up.
Well, you balloon.
And
Because
it's not necessarily that you get fat. It's just that you...
Well, to get yourself down to that point to get on stage is one, it's not an attainable, or it isn't attainable, but it's only attainable for a very short period of time.
Certainly with any kind of health considerations to it.
Well, if you go do that for a long period of time, like
you die.
Well, yeah. Just starve yourself to death. And so as much as, yes, it is attainable, but it is only attainable for that short period of time. And then you've got to go back to something that's more maintainable.
Wow.
Because that is, you know, it's not what people look like normally.
Absolutely agreed. The reason the body bloats when you start to throw more food, and that was the word this person who triggered the bodybuilder actually used. Oh, he's bloated out a bit, and he's heard that bad.
Oh no!
And it got kind of reactive. It didn't get like stoushy and people being thrown out and charges pressed and all this sort of stuff. It was like it became something it didn't need to be.
Yeah.
Because the wrong word was used. Because the guy who said it, he's not that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Like he didn't mean it that way, but at the same time, he only in hindsight appreciates that sometimes the words that he uses may not be heard the way he certainly intended.
Do I have a feeling I know who this person who said the thing?
Yeah.
I was like, I know who did this.
Yeah.
Can you see this guy's like the gossip going, come on, tell me. Yeah.
He listens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I say, he's good. That's not who he is.
No, that's
but
it.
you just use that wrong word
Yeah.
and it triggers that person. It turns into something it doesn't need to be.
Yep.
And then theoretically, both of them, I forget how we actually got onto these two guys, but they both hopefully go through a bit of a dark night of the soul going, I didn't need to say that, or I didn't need to hear it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And hopefully you sort of address yourself on that level.
Yeah, well, the person that obviously heard it that way, you know, like, well, it's going to sound really bad, but I don't know how any other way to say it. But, it is kind of true, because that's exactly what you do when you start to refeed.
I have my suspicions about this guy's general attitude and the reason why he goes that far.
I was just going to say, by the sounds of it, he was so triggered by that word specifically is because there's some inner work there that needs to be done about his own appearance and worth due to said appearance. I have no idea who this person is, by the way. I'll probably, the minute I walk in, I'm like, oh. But yeah, exactly.
Oh, you would have seen him around.
Yeah. And then obviously the person that said the thing that they didn't mean to say, like, I know exactly who that is. That sounded way judgy. And I know that he wouldn't have meant it in that light.
He's not that dude.
He's not that dude. But I also know that he runs around with a defensive armor on already. Like, he, you know, because of that, you know, because of his own mannerisms, his stature, his appearance, and all that sort of stuff. Like, he's almost expecting that someone's going to get pissed off with him.
Which is kind of why...
Like, he's waiting for it.
He's a very friendly dude.
Yeah.
To the point where even he admits that sometimes it's a little bit past the line of what most people consider comfortable.
So he's a bit creepy. I didn't get that vibe from it.
Not creepy.
Yeah. But TMI
but
styles.
But he's a bit intense sometimes. And it's not that that's a bad thing. It's just that, like, different people have different
different people have different
boundaries.
energies, yeah.
And it's like, because he just wants to be mates.
Mm.
And on some level, that's confronting when you first meet someone and he's just, oh, yeah, mate, I can help you with that, blah, blah, blah. It's like, who the fuck is this guy?
Mm.
It's like, he's got his own stuff.
Mm. By the sound of it, like, we all
have our own stuff. Everyone needs therapy. Get over it, guys. Why did we bring that up?
I have no idea. We're talking about Dark Night of the Soul, and then we're talking about triggers, and then conscious, you know, being present with the choices that you make.
Yeah.
And then we ended up telling stories about how people got triggered in the gym and it started fights.
Yeah.
That didn't really need to be.
Or arguments
that didn't need to be. Which I think you were just trying to give us a real life example.
Yeah. So it's a recent one.
Yeah. Thank you.
The example of those two guys being, it wasn't until the guy who said the thing spoke to me about it afterwards. I said, mate, like, I don't understand. What did I do wrong? It's like, all right, well, what if he's heard it this way?
Mm.
Oh, fuck. I need to apologize, don't I? You do, but he's got to be present with that as well and probably give an apology back, because he didn't need to react that way either, sort of thing. So there's pros and cons. So, but the necessity of the person who spoke to me reflecting on it is what we're talking about. It's like it's your ability to be present. Oh, shit, I feel crap. Why?
Yeah.
Because if you don't ask why, that's when you just smooth stuff over or do unconstructive things. Yep, I'll stick with that.
That was very professional.
Known for it, professionalism. That's me. But in terms of what we were talking about, like, do you think that the average person who's not invested in these kinds of discussions, in that level of self-awareness, is even remotely present with the idea of that being a trigger that's a clue to something else, or if it's just a momentary flash of anger of someone being a bell end and then wiping the slate clean or ignoring it or double downing on their attitude about why everyone sucks except them?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It makes perfect sense. So I believe that both ends of the spectrum has that level of presency. So you have that level of being present, like as you said, to have that reflection and go, why the fuck did that guy get so pissed off? And then, you hear it back, well, what happens if he, and that's when, we do something which I call practice empathy. And that's when we step outside yourself and look through the other person's eyes and you're like, oh, I totally didn't mean it like that, but I can see why he totally took it like that. So for that, I'm just going to go and explain and go, hey, mate, look, totally didn't mean it like that. Can understand why you would have reacted. And for that, sorry, I will totally watch my words. So, so there's that level of presency. But then also on the other end of the spectrum, there's still that level of presency because you're still thinking about it. If you're like, oh, that guy's a, fucking asshole. He said I look like this or that or whatever else. And you're still fucking present with it because you're thinking about it. You're thinking about it as in self, not you haven't then actually practiced empathy by stepping outside of yourself, outside of your triggered self and going, did he really mean it like that?
No, thank you. Because this is what I've been sort of like, you made the very, very apt on point.
Point.
It's one thing to ask the question, why would this fuckhead do that?
Yeah.
Why would he do that?
But
it's the energy that you ask it with. Like, is it an excuse to be more projective of your own feeling state onto that guy? And that's the only reason you're asking that question because you're not interested in the answer at all?
Yeah.
Or do you ask that question because you are interested in the answer?
Yeah.
Because that's
even if that answer is uncomfortable.
Even better.
Yeah.
Because at least then that's the lead in to the ability to practice empathy.
Yeah.
Which is hopefully the trigger to do a little bit more work on that conversation.
Regulation, whatever the case may be. But that's it. Both levels, like both ends, you are present with it because you're sitting there either stewing on it and then going and bitching about it to all your mates and being like, this guy's a fucking arsehole, he did this and he did that and all this sort of stuff, which is then reigniting those feelings of anger and frustration and whatever else to try and gain that validation of like, yeah, you're right. Because that is more, in that person, that may be the more comfortable road to take. You're still present with it because you're still choosing to do that. Or then, like as you said, like the guy that said it or even the guy that got triggered is like, I'm feeling really uncomfortable now, but I'm willing to step outside myself for a second here and going, hang on a minute.
How did we get here?
How do we get here? Like, did I potentially maybe overreact, which shows that, my level of emotional regulation is not the greatest? Or did that guy really mean what he said and he was just being a dickhead? At which point
do I want to take that personally?
Yeah. Do I then want to, take that personally? Like, it's almost like I say this to my 9-year-old all the time when he comes out because he has struggles with processing his anger. He tends to internalize until he blows up. And then unfortunately, he's way better. But he has then lashed out at people that didn't deserve it. And it's just like, dude, okay, like I can totally understand you're angry, mate. Like I would be pissed off too, but like, do you really want to, act out in anger? Like, how do you feel right now? And he's like, well, and a lot of the time it's like tired or drained or upset or whatever else. Well, wouldn't you prefer to go process that anger in a healthy way and move it through your body and not let it affect you? Or would you prefer to hang on to it to the point where you blow up and then, unfortunately, the poor person on the other end of the spectrum who was just, wrong place, wrong time and has just maybe talked to you when you were, focusing on everything on that anger that you were feeling and then you just turn around and go, boom.
And then it becomes a hurt people conversation.
And like even a similar thing happened last week. I ended up having to ring the school because he came out having a panic attack. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck happened? And he was telling me and I'm like, oh, this is not okay. So, and I immediately thought, I'm like, this kid is just being a kid. Like he's being an idiot, like essentially. But I rang the school and I'm like, look, I just want to let you know that this has happened just to let you know. So the principal or the vice principal rang me back an hour and a half later or something like that. I told the story. I said, look, and even the principal was like, so he's just being an idiot. And I'm like, yeah, he's just being an idiot. But I feel like because of my son's previous experience at his old school, it just physically triggered him. It triggered stuff in him that he needs to work through, which I'm talking to him about that currently. But I just wanted to inform you. So he goes, no worries, I'll investigate and all this sort of stuff. And yeah, lo and behold, the kid was just being an idiot. you know, and like he sort of came in, and that's what I said, I even said to my son, I'm just like, unless you have to work through that pain of what you went through, because otherwise everything that someone says to you that has a slightly similar flavor to it is going to set you off like that. And that's not going to be good for you. And you're going to end up pushing away a whole bunch of people because you're getting upset, angry, reactive, all of this sort of stuff when people didn't mean what they said in the way that you took it.
Not even close.
That's it. Way not even close.
I feel like we're talking about...
I think we went sideways a little bit.
No. Don't worry. We can drag this back. I feel like we're talking about qualities of presence.
Mm.
There's a presentness to the immediacy of the emotional reaction to the thing that happened.
Mm.
So you're aware of that. And you either choose that or stay stuck there.
Yes.
Whereas there's a quality of presentness with that and the deeper meaning behind it that you can then choose. And this was the long-worded version that I tried to explain what my interpretation of the difference between Dark Night of the Soul and shadow work is.
Yep.
It's like Dark Night of the Soul is that I'm just present with the emotion. I'm just experiencing. I've got to wait till it fucking dials back.
Yeah.
Like, so you're aware of it, but you're not metacognitively aware of it on that deeper level for the meaning, the objectivity. What do I want to do with this? How does this actually like become
a thing
that makes me better?
Yep.
Whereas the other version, the more intentional version, this is the emotion. What is that a clue to, as opposed to this is just me and my reaction now.
Yeah.
And that's where you go out for the validation. Oh, what an asshole. What do you guys think? Yeah, what a bellend. Let's brick him or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I just made sense of what you were saying.
Yes. Yeah.
But, yes, they are all present, but how higher-mindedly present are you with the thing that happened or is happening? I think is an important distinction. Because if you're going to stay in that relatively lower vibe level, you're just going to stay angry.
Have fun with that.
Like, have fun with your pocket full of winnings.
Yeah.
As opposed to what that would ideally lead into, which is like, well, I wonder how we got here. Why am I angry? What does that mean for me? Is that a me thing? Like you just told with your story. It's like, you've got to be present with the idea that some people don't mean what they say or do. Certainly not in the way that needs to be dialed up to 11.
Yeah, that it's interpreted, yeah.
And at some point, you've got to address the idea that, no, sometimes that's a you thing.
Yeah.
It's like the episode we did a while ago. It's like, am I the asshole?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, the fact that you're asking probably says that you're at least aware enough that you can address things, even if you are, but it's probably not.
Yeah,
but
if you're the one that's like, it's everyone else's problem but my own.
Yeah.
Then you kind of are the asshole.
Yeah. On some level or another. So it was Dark Night of the Soul.
Well, with Dark Night of the Soul, dun, dun, dun. Why do I feel like I've been watching way too many kids' movies? Did anyone else just get the crudes then? Like, dun, dun, dun.
Belt. Good times.
Good. Love the belt. Ego disillusion.
Disillusion or dissolution?
Dissolution. Sorry, I tried to I fucking sounded that out shit too. I was just like, my beautiful brain is not allowing me to say the things that it needs to say. So
it could be more annoying and call it dissolving of the ego.
Why couldn't you just say that the first time? That would have been so much fucking easier. Fun. So much easier.
Sorry, my bad.
My husband does that all the time, and I'm like, fucking just say that. He sits there and watches me struggles to like pronounce shit as my brain just hits like, oh, we're not going to play this game right now. I've started doing My other half does crosswords on his phone as a game.
Mm-hmm.
And we were out swimming yesterday, and I'm leaning over his shoulder. I'm like telling him all the answers. I'm like, I didn't realize how good I was at crosswords. The half the shit I've read out wrong. Still got the answer right though.
No, but I think this is a distinct. Like, all right, we're not about to talk about. You know what? Actually, this is not a bad example of ego dissolution. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
What I was saying before about Dark Night of the Soul, in that it's a thing that challenges your sense of self, your ego.
Yeah. The part of you that's always been you, that's like all of a sudden it's challenged. It's like, I don't know my life anymore.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So like that period of that depressive state is a process, I think, of ego dissolution, where you're shedding a bit of your ego because you've realized that it's not true and probably needs to die.
Well,
so your momentary flash of inspiration about your ability to do crosswords, because the irony is that I reckon you would be excellent at crosswords. It's just that there might be a bit of a disconnect between the words you know you mean and the actual pronunciation of the word.
Or the spelling.
And it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm about to poke you in your past here.
That's okay.
When you were a kid,
yeah,
did you get told you were dumb because you couldn't spell the word the way you were supposed to?
No, I don't think I was ever called dumb. I was just
Good,
like, yeah,
because I could see there being a whole bunch of kids who were.
Yeah. I was called wrong a lot. Like it was like, instead of it's wrong, it was like you're wrong.
Which I could see being interpreted as, like internalized as, I'm
dumb.
I'm dumb.
Yeah. So like the words itself were never spoken, but that like those words like, you know, you're wrong,
Yeah.
you know, type thing.
It's not the same, but it's kind of gets you to the same place,
Kind of
right?
gets you to the same place. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, especially when you last want to get your pen license and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's got my phone on voice to text. Sorry. Let's just get out of that.
Turn
now.
that into some content some other time.
I was like, this might be an idea. Yeah, so yeah, there was that. So, but
the necessity, because, you know, ego dissolution happens in both directions. Maybe there's some things that you believe about yourself that are kind of limiting. And the necessity of addressing that and going, mate, you're not wrong and you're not dumb.
yeah,
Maybe the technical skills required to finish a crossword are not your wheelhouse. But the ability to find the right word, or at least the meaning of the right word, is absolutely your wheelhouse. But there's a little bit of a disconnect in the technicality of it as opposed to the correct answer.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, so
So that as an example of the necessity of dissolving a certain element of your ego, going, you'd be great at helping someone with a crossword.
Oh, don't worry, I was on the shoulder going, this, that. My husband's like, you can't just spit words out like on the par on the second. I'm like, this is my brain processing. Be quiet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, one of them's right. Pick it.
But that's what I mean. It's like, you know exactly the answer that you need, but it's selecting that very specific technical thing that may not actually be what the crossword is looking for to fit.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, there was a lot of those. I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, but anything that was Greek mythology,
Just nailed.
nailed it. Like, yeah, the Indian god fucking nailed it. AJ's like, I wouldn't have got that. And I'm like, yeah, That's right.
But that's kind of what again, it's not necessarily specifically what we're talking about. That ultimately, that's what ego dissolution is. It's the ability to confront or have a part of you confronted that you've established or attached meaning to.
Well, our ego, essentially, I love the talk of the ego, but our ego essentially is made up of our belief structures, whether positive or negative. Nine times out of 10, they're kind of negative.
Safety mechanisms.
So they're kind of, made up of our limiting beliefs. It's the part of you that, in quotation marks, self-sabotage, because as we've spoken about, there's no such thing as self-sabotage because it's all just a part of you. And it's generally made up from what you've been told you can and can't do, i.e. when Todd said, like, hey, have you ever been called you're dumb? And when you take that on in from childhood into adult life, that kind of restricts you from stepping out and doing things because you have this inherent belief that you can't do something because of X, Y, Z. And or due to trauma, whether, I hate the fucking word big T or little t, it does my freaking brain in. But, some sort of trauma, neglect, whether emotional or whatever the case may be, and you've just adapted those behaviours in order to remain safe. So we're not going to step out of this space and we're not going to do this because every time I've done that, I've ended up, something's bad's happened type thing. So, then this part of you has been formed in order to sort of keep you safe, keep you in the known. It's how people get stuck in toxic relationships because when that's all they know from childhood, watching it into childhood, and then they grow up and then they move into that space, moving out of that space, it feels like chaos. We had a interesting conversation off air about that. So
that's exactly what ego dissolution is. It's like you spend all that time doing exactly what you've just described in an effort to crystallize your ego, to establish and solidify your sense of self.
Yeah.
But you got to get to the point where at some point you go, this particular bit is being obviously unhelpful.
Yeah.
I need to dissolve that. What's the root cause of that? Do I need to address this? Do I need to address that? So Carl Jung, because, can't go an episode without bringing him up.
Oh, totally. We're shadow here.
I think he basically said life starts at 40.
I think it's a bit earlier than that now, but I
35 to 40.
I know why.
But that is the example of the dude who invented this shit.
Yeah.
To be able to say it takes about the first 40 years of your life to crystallize your ego, your sense of self. Now, no matter what makes that up, whether it's the fun shit or the negative shit, and or like that 9 out of 10 things that are usually negative, and like the interpretation you make of that stuff, exactly as you said, to then address it and go, how many of these bits do I actually want? Is that old shit actually helping me here? And that's where ego dissolution on the macro or the micro form happens.
Yeah, definitely.
And ironically enough, we're also talking about this in terms of that dark night of the soul and shadow work. Shadow work's that massive, overarching ego dissolution. Whereas again, my interpretation of dark night of the soul is like those little smaller edge bits.
The little brushes that you get that says, hey, you might need to look at that.
And so shadow work is taking the proverbial sledgehammer to it, whereas dark night of the soul is like the chisel with the bits off the edge of that crystallized.
When you eat something that's way too hot and you've got to eat the edges first.
Yeah. That, as a hell of an analogy, is exactly what I mean. Because you're not just going to
dunk yourself in the middle and go, oh, fuck, we're not doing that.
Yeah, my face hurts. It's not right.
Oh.
But that's my interpretation of ego dissolution.
Yep.
Or dissolvement or...
Well, I like dissolution better. Dissolvement is obviously easier for me to pronounce with my beautiful brain. But... And this is something that, it's kind of unlearning now, which is really cool. But a lot of, as we spoke about in the last episode when we were talking about, spirituality and religion and all of those sort of things, and the positive and negative sides of both. There's definitely a very toxic side to spirituality.
All of them.
All of them, 100%. And a lot of inside that space where it was just like, oh, love and light only or whatever else, there was a lot of talk of ego death and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. And you can just watch the judgy face.
I have a suspicion I know where this conversation's going.
But
it's a valuable place.
It's valuable place. But you can't actually kill your ego because that is essentially...
You need it.
You need it. It's a part of you. It's I actually just presented a workshop on this, just in the weekend just gone from recording this, where, and I explained that exactly thing. It is a part of you, what we are trying to do when we, dissolve or, kill, whatever term you want to use, is essentially put you back in the driver's seat of your fucking life. Yep. And not put your ego there. So you're not running on a whole bunch of unconscious patterning and beliefs and stuff of the whys and hows that you can't do the thing. And then every time you do the thing and you get to a certain point, something happens and that just compounds the reasons and why you can't. Like that is
old unhelpful shit.
Yeah, the old unhelpful shit. That's like, your ego is in the driver's seat of that. So the dissolution of that is to be able to, like you would with the guy that got triggered, is taking a step back from that and going, is this really helpful? Is this getting me where I want to go? Is this really who I am? Is this really who I want to be? And being able to, as you mentioned, find the root causes, do the work, clear the shit up, heal it, whatever you want to call it, and essentially know that it is a part of you and it is there. And honouring that part too, because a lot of people are very, they do a lot of hating on that part. The fucking thing, it's, it's fucked me up so many times, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that part's you, mate. Like,
so,
hating on that is like hating on yourself, and that ain't healthy. Like, it's
not like,
yeah,
it is.
It's it.
When a caterpillar turns into a butterfly?
Yeah. Oh, we've had this conversation.
We have? Have we had it on air?
No.
Okay. So you know what I'm about to say then, right?
Yeah, it turned into this mush fest.
Yeah. It literally dissolves itself in the cocoon and then completely restructures itself. So it basically boils itself down to stem cells.
Yeah.
To then reconfigure itself into a butterfly. That is what people mean when they say ego death. This is what we mean when we say ego dissolution on a macro or a micro form. That's the bit that I believe you've just very thoroughly described just then. It's like you look at yourself and you don't hate on stuff. You just evaluate it on a very metacognitive level to be able to establish new value by which to dissolve that into new ego stem cells. Because I'm going with the clunky caterpillar analogy. To reform it into new butterfly ego.
The butterfly effect, everyone.
Yeah, there you go.
That's how it works.
The idea behind the mythological metaphor of the phoenix is exactly what we're trying to describe.
Exactly. You've got to burn part of you down. Or as our first original episode.
Burn down the scaffolding.
Take away the scaffolding that's keeping you up to be able to reform it in the way that you want to. Doesn't mean that part necessarily dies. It's just that, and then we step into that either not dark night of the soul or that shadow space of going, well, I know that part is me. And that's okay, and I still love that part, but, I got this. And, because it's like, as I explained to the students that I was presenting with over the weekend, I'm like, your ego is always going to be there. You're never, ever going to get rid of it. It's a part of you. How loud it is, that's completely up to you.
I don't believe you can be conscious without your ego.
No, you can't. It is the conscious part of yourself.
No, I was about to say, I don't know if I've ever gone into it about the theory behind it, but like, you know, the no mind, the ego, the sense of self, like I believe that's all that same part of your psyche. Like you cannot think without your ego. No. Your ego is doing your conscious thinking for you. It doesn't mean it's doing all of your thinking, because there's a whole bunch of other cool shit going on in the background.
Yeah.
But pretending like the ego is the enemy, as opposed to the bit of you that's not quite aligning you with what you say you want.
Yeah, but it's also the part of you that, and this is, it's like that whole radical responsibility factor. It's the part of you that you've allowed to take the driver's wheel for fuck knows how long. So, you know, you got to get back in there somehow.
Yeah.
Going, okay, well, you know, you're in the passenger seat now. No backseat driving. Let's go.
If you want to do that, you got to turn yourself into caterpillar mush.
Yeah, like pretty much.
I'm sorry, there's no real way to do it.
Well,
like
it's fucking true. Like, you know, shadow work in itself is essentially turning yourself into caterpillar mush. That's like beige. It's stuck now.
No. It's absolutely on point. We were talking about you and crosswords before. It's like, you've got all the caterpillar mush ready to go.
Just got it form.
But the exact formation of the butterfly word for the crossword isn't there yet. Mm-hmm. Now we're just mixing up metaphors left, right, and center. It's just going to go wrong. I mean, it hasn't gone creepy yet, so there's that.
There's still time.
There is plenty of time. There always is.
I don't know. There hasn't been a lot of... Well, mind you, I've been out of... I just made it creepy.
Yeah, but it's only creepy in your head so far, because you haven't actually said anything that's creepy yet.
Like, I've been out of action for a while.
Yeah, you made it creepy.
I just made it creepy. Well, told you, there's still time. Yeah, so...
That is in very, very, very gentle reference to the surgeries that Sky just went through recently, in case it matters, which, you know, she can tell you about the details of or not, but that's a her thing.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's going to be a total episode thing, because
it's going to be.
Like, I've had so many cool conversations with people, you know, about how society is built and how it's not really built for women, and, you know, our hormones and our cycles and stuff like that, and we always end up with shit, essentially. Blinky. This is like total blinky going on over here.
Just processing. That will be another episode.
And you got a fucking typewriter here.
Yeah.
Like flashing lights, slides. What are those things? Like, you know, did you have them when you were a kid? They had like the wheel.
I know what you mean. Don't ask me what they're called.
Yeah, that. It's like you had the wheel of the films, and you stuck it in the thing, and you clicked it, and it gave you different pictures.
Yeah. Like a kid's camera.
Yeah.
But not. Yeah. Anyway, there was Dark Night of the Soul.
In other news,
there was ego dissolution.
Yep. Anything else?
I was really hoping you were cross-referencing the
my
brain
notes.
dump.
I was actually, but hang on. Once I've got it off. Well, the brain dump says that I'm actually, like, you know, writing novels with my voice.
You record... It transcribed a lot of stuff from
oh my fuck. How long did I leave that open for? Oopsies. There we go. Can you read that far?
Yes.
This is how organised we are not. Can we tell that someone was late today?
We're fine.
Yeah, and it wasn't me.
When is it not me? It's my house and I'm still late. So, the third thing...
Is that going to be like a part 2?
We could give it a bash.
I think it's going to be a part 2. As we think about it.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm stunned we tried to fit it into this episode as it is.
I know, right?
Part 2.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. With that being said, I've got to start, remember?
Yeah. I was just going to say, yeah, you're not getting any hints. You can just deal with it and sit on this cliffhanger of the amazing thing that's going to be in part 2 that we're just not hinting at.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So you guys,
we've totally been vague, haven't we?
How treed is everyone? It's like, no, you got to tell me everything. It's like, I think you need to deal with your ability to confront the chaos of the universe.
That was a bit clickbaity, wasn't it?
Yeah. I've seen this episode of whatever sitcom.
Well, do we?
No.
No? We're just going to leave it?
They can just deal with it.
Alrighty then. In that note, be good.
Be kind.
Be smart.
Be your best you.
No bar fights.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
See you guys.
See ya.